The next thing I'd like to talk to you about is appraisal. You've probably heard this term if you've been around the office any amount of time. Appraisal is a wonderful tool and a lot of sales reps utilize it for roofs. What is it? Appraisal it's not an endorsement, it's a part of the policy, usually listed in the loss section of the policy. It's usually an alternative to lawsuit, and appraisal is set forth to keep all of these insurance disputes out of the courtroom, basically was the idea behind it. What it means for us is that if the insured has a loss and the insurance company agrees that there is a loss that is covered, a peril covered by their policy, but they can't agree on the amount of loss, that's when the appraisal process comes into being. When is it used? Well, that's when it's used. I'll give you a real life example. I think it's easier to learn through real life. I had a roof. It was an antique mall. It was owned by a guy named Jim, and it was a flat roof made of mod bit. It was 300 squares, and the carrier came out. They looked at the roof. They did not feel like the hail damage had caused significant damage to the mod bit roof, even though they paid for damages on the inside from leaks. They did not feel the roof deemed replacing. However, all of the adjacent metals, the flashings, the vents, the pipes, sorry, there's a jet. They were beat to death, and the insurance carrier did not argue that. The insurance carrier extended coverage on all of the adjacent metals, totaling an amount something like $27,000 to $30,000, right? So by doing so, the insurance carrier had extended coverage. They agreed that yes, there was a storm event that occurred while you were covered, your property was covered on our policy, that we should pay for and replace with like, kind, and quality to bring it back to what it was before the storm occurred, before the physical loss occurred. So they extended coverage, but they didn't pay to replace the roof. Well, guess what? That's when we enacted the appraisal process. So how do I know if my roof qualifies? If your insurance carrier has extended coverage on that storm for that property, they're saying, yes, this occurred on our watch. Even if they don't pay to replace the roof, they've extended coverage. So what we did, we got them to pay for the metals, and then we negotiated a coating, a repair to the roof, right? So now we got them on the hook because they have extended coverage. Prior to that, I looked through the policy, and especially if you're in Arkansas, please be aware that it's very common to have adopted Arkansas changes that make appraisal a voluntary process. So in other words, the carrier and the customer have to agree that appraisal is necessary. That's not as common in Oklahoma, Texas, some other states. So you have to read through the policy to see what the appraisal clause states, but it clearly lays out the process. It says, typically, that the insured will choose or name an appraiser. The insurance carrier will choose or name an appraiser. The appraisers will meet on the roof. They're experts at adjustment and they're experts at product knowledge, roofing, contractors. sources will choose a judge that will decide if there's a dispute among the two appraisers. If they can't decide the amount of the loss, then whoever they have picked to be the judge will decide for them. So, what happened with Jim's building? Jim enacted the appraisal clause, and the insurance carrier was so very concerned about going to appraisal that they actually decided to negotiate prior to going to appraisal, and suddenly they just wanted us to send them an estimate. So they replaced the roof. We didn't end up with a coating. They replaced the roof, they replaced the metals, the whole bit. How do I start the process? The insured needs to notify the carrier that they'd like to enact the appraisal clause. It can be done as simply as verbally. However, it's best if they send an email to the carrier that states that they'd like to start the appraisal process. It's best if they go ahead and name their appraiser in that email with their contact information. Generally, and different policies are different, but generally speaking, most policies will have conditions where they have to respond within 30 days or something of that nature. Prior to starting the appraisal process, after you've spoke to your customer about it and you've researched the policy, you've taken lots of photos, and after the insurance carrier has extended coverage, usually we like it if the carrier has sent a check and that we have a check regardless of what it's for. That's a perfect place to start the appraisal process. But you'll need to speak with your branch manager or with Jonathan or me, and we need to get the materials necessary to the appraiser that we will name, or that your customer will name as his or her appraiser, so that they can look through it and make sure that it's something that they will work as the appraiser for, get all of the details. This generally includes many, many photos. They'll want a copy of the policy and to go through the appraisal clause. Once that is done, you can contact me. I'll give you a sample of the appraisal request that you can create for your customer, or your customer can use it as a template to create their own, but the request has to come from the insured. So once you start that process, the insurance company will name their appraiser. Sometimes they don't even know who to name as an appraiser, so they'll end up contacting our appraiser to ask for the name of another appraiser who they can use. It's a very good scenario for us. Obviously, we want to use it in the right ways when it's truly justified, but that's the appraisal process.